पावर भी गया। पावर फेलियर फिर से। मैस्कर सर, हॅलो, गुड इव्हनिंग सर. हो सर, करतोय करतोय. ओके ओके सर, करतोय.
Dr. Anil, I think you need to unmute.
I'm doing that. So it's 6 o'clock, sir, standard time.
Yeah, I think we can start.
Yeah. We are very much on time. So we'll start with the. Santosh sir, just check live streaming. Yeah, live streaming. We are on. Okay. Hello everyone. I am Dr. Anil Pete, Associate Dean, School of Pharmacy and Technology Management, SVKM, NMIMS, deemed to be University, Hyderabad campus. Welcome all the respected directors, deans, principal, HODs, IQAC members, and all the teachers for the 4th Pharma Talk webinar organized by our school. I also take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Sharad Maiskar sir and Dr. Shubhajyoti Ray sir, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor NMIMS, Dr. R.S. Gaud sir, Director NMIMS Shirpur campus and Director SVKM Pharma Institutions, Dr. Ravi Kiran, Deputy Director and Director in charge of NMIMS Hyderabad campus, Dr. Bala Prabhakar, Dean, SPP, SPTM Mumbai, and Dr. Ashwini Deshpande, Associate Dean, SPTM Shirpur. Pharma Talk is an online platform for pharma professionals, early career scientists, as well as for students, bringing virtually all together to discuss current status and recent trends in pharmaceutical sciences. We are excited to see the support we received for PharmTech webinars across India. I am very much delighted to inform you that more than 1,200 teachers from 24 different states and 5 union territories of our countries have registered for this webinar. We aim to bring in more pharma stalwarts to this online platform and plan to extend Pharma Talk webinars beyond this lockdown period into regular working days, maybe once in a month. As of now, we sincerely hope to learn together and share our knowledge within the safe confines of our home during this pandemic period. Further, Pharma Talk team urges everyone in the audience as well as in the pharma profession to do their bit to follow social distancing norm, especially these days when lockdowns are easing off. Before we begin, as usual, few housekeeping announcements. In case due to power cuts or any reason the streaming pauses or goes irregular either at the beginning or in the middle of the talk, please do not panic. We will post the entire webinar immediately after the event for your convenience. Participation certificate for today's webinar can be obtained without any quiz. It will be made available to you after filling the feedback, which will be available to you at the end of this session on your registered email ID. We take up questions at the end and you may type in questions either on YouTube or Zoom chat boxes and I will read them to our guest. Before we begin the main event, I request Dr. Ravi Kiran in charge director of our Hyderabad campus, to introduce today's speaker of our audience and also give snapshot about our campus at Hyderabad. Dr. Ravi Kiran, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Anil. So thank you all the participants who have taken a very active participation in this entire the journey. I'm sure some of you all must have experienced the farmer talk 1, 2, 3. And I think today, if we have seen this overwhelming response, and I'm sure the continuous journey that is really reciprocating your presence here. So thank you for being here. And I take the opportunity of welcome you once again. And I would like to give you a snapshot of the Hyderabad campus. And then I would like to take the opportunity of introducing today's the special guest who will be talking on the theme, the importance of the importance of accreditation and ranking in the higher education. So NMIMS, the larger body, the SVKM, we fondly call and established in the year of 1934, and whereas the NMIMS Mumbai in 1981 with a specialization in the area of management education. Then NMIMS got the deemed university status in the year of 2003, and hence that the success is continuing to be looking at the expanding with the various business schools. Today we have more than 17,000 students with the NMIMS with the 8 different campuses and 17 schools across. And NMIMS is the very first institution in India who got the NAC accreditation with the 3.59 A plus tier 1, the grade 1 university. And more specifically, as Dr. Anil Pite has mentioned in the initial discussions, the School of Pharmacy is very recently established in Hyderabad, and today we have a courses offered in D Pharma, B Pharma, B Pharma plus MBA, with MBA and B Pharma plus M Pharm accredited by NBA. I think if you look at the other schools that we have, which is established NMIMS as a campus in Hyderabad in the year of 2010. And today we have a largest campus among the NMIMS, which is in Hyderabad campus, which is located at the Jecharla, almost has a 90 acres of campus, and which is offering various programs. And our offerings are in the area of School of Science or a School of Commerce. If you look at School of Science, if you look at right now, we have a new program which is coming up in the area of BSc, Applied Statistics and Analytics. And the School of Commerce, if you look at, we have a BCom and BBA. School of Pharmacy, as many of you know, that BPharm plus MBA, which is an integrated program, which is we are running right now. And we have a new program, which is again launching this particular year, which is a School of Technology and Management and Engineering, which is offering you MBA Tech, which is an integrated program with BTech and MBA. School of Law, we have a BBA and LLB, BBA and honors. And we also have executive programs which we are offering to the working professionals, especially in weekends, Saturday and Sunday, in the area of post-graduation in business analytics, post-graduation in fintech, and a post-graduation in management, which is a general management for the working professionals. And probably the pictures will give you more about the infrastructure that we have. So what we really we say is that we walk the talk. Today, if you see in the case of a pharmaceutical, the pharma department that we have an extensive labs that we have, the state-of-the-art labs that we have. And probably during the discussion, Dr. Meena will definitely bring about it because she comes from the pharma background. And you can see the classrooms that we have and some of these industry talks that we have. So the primarily, if you really look at it, as NMIMS, we really do what is not just the academic part of it, but we constantly connect with the industry, so that what happens is the academia and industry go hand in hand once the student completes its graduation, either at the undergraduate level or at the postgraduate level. So once the student pass out from the NMIMS, is the industry ready? I think that is what the core of our program offerings. And probably, yes, just not the academics part of it, but at the same time, if you see the journey that the student experiences. I think that is something which we always enjoy, not just as a teaching fraternity or a non-teaching fraternity. We all live like a family. The students that they come from a different diversified backgrounds, so they enjoy in this during their tenure, either at the UG level or at the PG level. So you can see some of these, the initiatives that as a campus that we take right now, because of the pandemic situation, that most of our sessions are online, and we make sure that the engagement continues despite of any difficulties. We continue to have a guest lectures, alma mater connect, and a parents meet. So I take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Meena Chintamaneni, who is the registrar of our university. And she has a 20 plus years of experience in research and administrative area. She started her teaching in 1997, and she's continued to, though she is a part of the, as a registrar, but she loved to be with the students. She continued to engage them wherever she has an opportunity to teach. She worked with the various within the NMIMS various departments in the capacity of lecture professor and chairperson, HOD of the pharmacology, HOD in the clinical pharmacy, and I'm sure many of you are able to see the presentation. I think I take this opportunity to welcome you, ma'am. I think what we have made in this one slide is doesn't define you, and I'm sure your lecture or your special talk today and enables an entire enables everybody in the area of the special talk that you're going to talk on the role of accreditations and ranking in higher education. Over to you, Dr. Meenaji.
Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy after all that introduction of the campus, the university, the campus, and of course about me too. Also that the Associate Dean mentioned that almost around 24 institutions have registered, faculty from different institutions, as much as 24 institutions, which is quite big a number. And 5 union territories. We have also received registrations from 5 union territories. I thank wholeheartedly for all the interest that has been shown towards this Pharma Talk. And I hope all of you are safe, staying within and fighting this COVID-19. As pharmacists, we also have a responsibility at this pandemic time that we have to be staying safe, not creating panic, and of course utilizing the time to the utmost efficiently, so that we do really well and we spread a positive culture around our fraternity and as well as around our environment. So compliments to the in charge director as well as the Associate Dean of Hyderabad to arrange such a topic, arrange such a talk, and of course invite me to deliver on this particular topic, where I think today everybody is running around, and I don't know how many of us have very clear idea about what are we running about for. Is it for a good ranking? Is it for a good accreditation score? Is it to show somebody? Is it to put students to a point where they would come to an organization where they are well ranked? So many of them, have all these apprehensions about what do you understand by this. And today, the higher education, you have more than 330 universities. You have 33,000 institutions or colleges, if you look into. And if you can believe it, I have some of the figures written so that, it's of course taken from Google. So you have 20 million students in India. So this is the variety, and this is the vast, diverse student fraternity in India. So why do I have to be specifying this, that 20 million students in India, is only because we as teachers, we as the fraternity of teaching fraternity have a duty which we are shouldering to nurture the students. So this talk will basically not only have some of the parameters or some of the concepts which we have apprehension towards. What do you mean by approvals? What is approval? I already have an approval. Is it necessary for me to go into ranking? So what is approval and what is ranking? I do have a good ranking. Do I have to go in for accreditation? This is another apprehension that every one of us have in mind. So to the best of my ability that I can resolve, and to what I understand and my perception about all this is over a period of time, which has really benefited me in making my views very clear, I would like to be putting forth you. I hope I am audible and I am clear to whomever whoever is watching this. And I'm happy that so much of support within 15 minutes of we starting this program, we starting this talk, we've already received. Let's first understand, we are all from pharma domain, I hope, from all institutions. I can see 2 industries also who have logged in. But what do we mean by an approval? All of us report to PCI. PCI means Pharmacy Council of India, the apex body in pharma domain. So what is an approval? We generally go in for PCI approval. The Pharmacy Council of India approves an institute. When do they do that? It's only that they have a minimum set of standards who, wherever in India, whoever wishes to open a degree program or a postgraduate program in pharmacy needs to go in for complying with the minimum standards which are required in the imparting the education of pharmacy. So what I mean, why am I emphasizing is, it's only talking about the minimum standards which are required, whether it is in a metro city, whether it's in a remote village, whether it's in a rural area, whether anywhere you see pan India, wherever whoever wants to do it, however big or small the organization is, the standards which you need to meet with is the minimum standard that you need to have, which is called as an approval process. And that's why we would have noticed that whenever we seek approval from PCI, it's always before the start of the program that they would ensure that they do have the necessary requirements to initiate this degree or postgraduate program, and so would the approval be sought. So while I have an approval, what do you mean by ranking? Why do I go to ranking? Now, last 2-3 years, if all of us would have noticed that the NIRF ranking, forget about the private rankings. We understand how private rankings run, how they are listed, how many of them apply, what are their parameters. But at least, what is this NIRF ranking? Do we actually really need to go in for NIRF ranking? Is it mandatory? What if I go in and what if I do not go into? What is NIRF ranking? It's a national institutional ranking framework. So what happens is, any ranking framework, it has a set of standards. These set of standards are considered as some kind of a benchmark where once all the applications, all the data has been received from the given receipt of applications, whoever has scored best in all the parameters is ranked number 1. And so all of us are compared towards the best of who is going to be the best and ranked first in that domain, within an institute, within the pharma domain, within a college, within the university, or probably an overall ranking. So what happens is, this also becomes very important, because in case of the individual ranking, as you must have seen that in the introduction, Dr. Ravi was very proud to say that our School of Pharmacy in Mumbai, which is hardly a decade old, we were able to get almost the 9th rank in NIRF, the 13th rank in NIRF. It's not simple. What do? It's a kind of benchmark that we set in for each of the parameters and try to excel in that. And so how close we are to the one who is the first in India is what we are trying to do, is something called as a ranking. Now let's come to the main topic of today's Pharma Talk, is accreditation. Very near and dear to my heart. So let me be very passionate about what do you mean by accreditation. It's nothing else but a set of quality standards. It's a set of quality assurance. Oh, what do you mean by it? It's something that you say that what, as pharmacists, we must be remembering the USP definition of quality assurance. A system does what it purports to do. I still can remember it, my quality assurance MPharm time. What does it mean? Every small aspect that you take and you do in your institute has got a set of standard which it meets in. And these set of parameters are going to be modulated, tweaked in the way that the person, the accrediting agency is requiring to. Now, if you look into, in India, we have 2 accrediting agencies. One is a program accreditation. Second is an institute accreditation. Both of it is important to us. Some of the institutes go in for NBA as NBA accreditates technical programs. So far, pharma is under the ambit of MBA. Although currently this January, we received a notification saying that pharma, the apex body is Pharmacy Council of India. And probably only if you're interested in, it's not mandatory that we need to go in for the AICT approval. But till now, we have received no communication about the accreditation, which currently is with the National Board of Accreditation, which also has pharmacy under its ambit. May it be your postgraduate, may it be your graduation, may it be your diploma in pharmacy, or may it be your PharmD. All these things are currently within the ambit of National Board of Accreditation. What is the difference? It only looks into the program accreditation. My institute has got BPharm, my institute has got MPharm, my institute has got a PhD program. What am I applying for? I am applying for only the BPharm program. I am applying for only the PG program. So it's very program specific. And so all the parameters which are involved in this particular type of accreditation only revolves around the program. Of course, there are 3 parameters which are institutional parameters, but they are common even if you have BPharm, MPharm, or PhD. And what about NAC? All of us have heard about NAC because you would be a part into the organization if it's a multi-discipline organization, if it's a university, or if it's an institution which runs
Dr. Anil, we are not able to hear, madam. Dr. Santosh?
Meena ma'am, we are unable to hear you.
I think we lost Dr. Minaji. I think, yeah.
Yeah, we got it, sir. We got it.
I think we missed you last 2 minutes, so probably request you to,
okay, I need to understand from, probably I was talking about the NAC accreditation, right?
Just after the NBA, I think.
Yes. So we start with the NAC accreditation. That's what I said. I'm so passionate about it. And it's an institutional accreditation. And so we start with what do you understand by NAC and how these parameters. Today's the gist of what I want to put forth would be whether it is NIRF, whether it is NBA, or whether it is the NAC accreditation. Each one of them has got a set of parameters laid down, and believe me, all these parameters are interlinked. So it's not a big question whether you're going to be going in for an X type of accreditation or an X type of ranking. All of them, according to me, revolve around the same parameters. Our university, one of the programs currently went in for an ASTSB accreditation, which is for management domain. Believe me, it was so similar to that of NBA and very recently, my engineering school in Mumbai went in for ABET accreditation. You wouldn't believe that I felt after going through the whole process, NBA is more stringent. Whereas once you have gone through NBA, you know the process so well that ABET became quite simple for us. So the point in what I wish to make here is all these connotations and all these different agencies that you have, may it be NBA, may it be NAC, All these things are all revolving around the same kind of parameters. And let's take up something where we want to take in, why should we go in for all this? Is it necessary? Once I have an approval, why don't I continue going ahead? Because approval is something that is mandatory. I'm not doing anything illegal. Today, my dear friends, the world has changed. Today, it's a choice that is being given to everybody. You look at the generation today, they have much more knowledge about where they want to be, what they want to be, how they want to be, probably in next 10 years from today, which I suppose in that age, we all of us were not so clear about. Why is this possible today? It's only because the thanks to the internet availability, all the things that is there in the fraction of a second that they can Google around and get the information, which probably we went to the different libraries and we had to search for a long time and get the matter to it. So what do I mean to say? If I as a student, or I as a person, I as a parent, you as a parent, wish to send your child to one of the schools, what would you first would like to be clear about? It's an institution which has certain approvals in place. That's right. That's my first filter. The second filter is how good the institution is. How does one actually get into this kind of a rut? And how does he choose his institute? Is only because, number one, I personally believe a brand sells. A brand makes a difference. And that's the reason it's very important. How do you make a brand? Brand is nothing else, but according to me, it's credibility. It's credibility. And how do I win the trust of the person who is going to be the next few years in my under my shade? And after that, he is going to educate himself and probably start his life. And whatever he does further in his life is the investment of these 3 years, 4 years, 5 years as a student that he is going to be under my environment. Now, probably it's 20 minutes that we are speaking. Many of my colleagues who might have been in many of my lectures must have heard the story very often. There were two friends. These two friends were very dear friends. And these two friends had their own differences, but they were so close to each other that nothing could break the friendship. The only purpose of me telling this story is you would understand what do you mean by a brand. These two friends had a limited amount of resource that they had, but both of them had to buy a beautiful color television. So one of them said, money is not an issue for me. I mean, my intention is to go for a very good quality. And that's the reason I have nothing to make choice for. I would go in for nothing less than a Sony TV. The other friend said, oh no, I can't afford to. I would stay myself. I'm happy. My purpose needs to be served. I would buy something like a Videocon TV. Please, I have nothing against these brands. Let's name it as X and Y. The reason why is because both of them made their own choices. But if you believe that if the Sony TV would have conked off within 1 week or a month of the new TV coming into my house, the only reaction of mine would be, it's okay, it's an electronic item. It has to. Maybe this is one of the units which might have gone faulty, and so might be. Electronic items, it does happen so many times, but I assure you, they would take care of it. At the same time, for my other brand, if the same thing happens for my other brand, immediate reaction would be, I knew this. That's why I say, go in as per a good brand. Probably the money doesn't matter. It matters is what is quality. So the brand speaks for it. And that's the reason today there are so many parents, there's so many students who actually make choices. Not in terms of anything else, but they list out what are the programs, how are these programs doing, what is the kind of infrastructure, who are the faculty members here, what is the kind of pedagogy done here. Till the time I graduated and I started teaching, this terminology of pedagogy never got into my head. Today the students are well aware of what is blended technology. We just got disconnected. I am not technologically savvy, but the students here are so technologically savvy. But you will see that if you have online lectures, they would never get disconnected from there. probably if they're learning something from the lecture. And that's the reason we are here today, to understand what is so important that you need to actually work for it. And whether it's a ranking, whether it is an accreditation, whether it's a program accreditation, or whether it's an institute accreditation, the performance and the work and the duty of a faculty in the teaching fraternity is much more than what we believe. So let's look into some of it. For example, we started talking about students making their choice. So let's start about few of the parameters in this limited time of 1 hour or probably 1 hour 15 minutes that we have, to talk about what is so important in terms of students. I request all of them to be on mute because there is some disturbance. So if there is the organizer, just put them on.
Meena, ma'am,
I
please unmute
requested,
yourself.
yes,
Yeah.
I requested the host to put all others on
Actually,
mute
there
and
is-
please unmute myself. However, this is what is technology. However, let's get back to the stream. What do you understand by the importance of students? I told you students make a choice. Now let's come to the other side of the table. In case of, say, National Board of Accreditation, I'm going in for a pharmacy accreditation program. What does it look into? What does it see? In the criteria for it talks only about students, students, and students. In the profile, it only talks about what is the intake that you have, approved strength that you have, how many do you fill, what is the gap that you have for the last 3 years. What are they looking at? They are looking at, is it that students are coming there with choice and they are being retained in your institute? So if it is so, your intake and your number of students who have sought admission would be same, or there would be very little gap. At the same time, you talk about a student in terms of NAC. In terms of NAC, what do they say? Yes, students are important. How many students are there? From where are they? And how diverse is the particular student fraternity in your institute? Why is this important? Whether it is students or whether it is faculty, the diversity makes the learning environment environment more better, because more the diversity, better is the learning. Everybody puts in their inputs and the discussions are more, the variety is more, the knowledge is more. So the assimilation needs to be more, absorption will be more, and so the knowledge taken in would be more. So what happens in NAC? NAC talks about how many students are admitted, total number of students. Do you have a gender diversity? Do you have students coming in? Diversity does not include only geographical diversity. It also includes the gender diversity. It also includes the economic conditions of these students. So all these things that are taken care of, and both together overlap in case of NIRF. Less is the gap between the total intake and the number of students, better are your marks. You understand what am I talking about? Is the first parameter of NIRF ranking, the teaching learning parameter, where in the TLR, if you look into the student strength, where you talk about the SS as the student strength, it's the only thing that you look into. Please go back and do some analysis from the internet where the 2 years data is being put on the website. It only talks about how many students you can maximum take into your program and how many students are currently into your program. If you look into that, if the total is the same, if the numbers are the same, you get the highest marks. What does this mean? This means that the choice that the student makes as the best sought college or as the best sought institute makes a lot of difference as the first and the foremost thing in any kind of ranking, in any kind of accreditation. So all I wish to say is you make a very important component in building the brand. Why are we so passionate about it? Is because I take the pride in when I say I am from NMIMS, where I take the pride to say, because I know the brand is there and I carry the brand way on my shoulders when I speak to public. And that's where I feel that when all the faculty members take the pride in telling that you are from the teaching fraternity belonging to XYZ, so make the XYZ so competent enough, so well known enough, and your contribution will go a long way. Teachers are the next pillars. Let's come to teachers, faculty. No, there can be no replacement for a faculty. It's the most important pillar in any education system. Right from the ancient times, where a guru used to be told, a teacher used to be having a grade of more than or equivalent to parents. Today is no less. Only thing is the generations have changed, and the way it has been portrayed, a student and a teacher relation has changed, but it's always going to be that the teachers are going to be the best guides, and teachers would be remembered. It's just to share with you, the other day, before the lockdown, before this COVID-19, we were just walking towards for one of the official meetings that we were in Delhi, me and my colleague, and all of a sudden, amongst the whole crowded place in the Delhi airport, somebody calling up Meena ma'am, and it was quite embarrassing. But when I looked into it, was one of the students of the first batch of the undergraduate program, who was standing right in front of me, probably changed in his physique, and he was so overwhelmed to, in that short span of 5 minutes, to say where he was, what he was doing, how he is doing. And that itself is a testimonial to your education, to your program. And that's why we say that even if you have these rankings, accreditation, it is just the start. It's just the beginning. One of my mentors always said that if at all you're going into the first cycle of any kind of accreditation, it always tells you that you are confirming that you are into the path of quality. Because all these accreditations are only trying to assure that the system is into the path of quality. So the first cycle, whenever you go into for any kind of accreditation, I'm not particularly talking about institute, program, international, any kind of accreditation, it always talks about the quality and the institute, the system getting into the path of quality. The moment you're in the path of quality and you get what you want in the first cycle does not mean that it all just washes away. It only makes a difference that you take this as a starting point, go ahead, and within your next cycle, you assure that what you had believed that you are in the path of quality, you are proving that you're assuring that you are in the path of quality. So always it's known that the second cycle of any kind of accreditation is called as you being into a quality assurance sector. Okay. The third part, you are into the quality, you have assured your quality. What next? The third step, you're going further. You can't stay back, because if you are stagnant, the world moves ahead. So you have to be moving along with what the world is moving. Change is the only thing which you have to keep in pace with. So how do you actually keep in pace with is what is the challenge in the third cycle that you have, which always would be proved if you enhance the quality, where it is told as the third phase of any kind of accreditation is called as quality enhancement, quality enrichment. You enrich, put something into the quality in which you have already excelled and try to enrich it, and that's where you prove yourself that it's into the path of enriching the quality. Yes, you have enriched. Now what next? The fourth phase or the next phase is always, when you have it further and further, it's always the enhancement. There is no stoppage to enhancement. You can go on enhancing your quality until you excel, and there is no end to it. if there is an end to it, it's a challenge that you retain on that particular path. And that's where it's said that the quality enhancement is a step where you are in the fourth phase of any cycle of accreditation. And it is told that all this is to be told, and incremental differences that are always looked into are to be measured. Because I feel within the institute, when I am working in an institute, I am always biased, where I feel that, yes, I am doing fine, my institute is doing fine. So every accrediting agency has got a set parameter where they feel that the purpose and the objective of what we are working for needs to be attained. And that's where we would now touch upon some small parameters which I would like all of you to please bear in mind. We are all from pharmacy domain. When we are all pharmacy domain, all the hands which are being raised and the questions which are being posted could be compiled by one of the organizers and could be taken up at the end of the session. We are only half of the session. We are actually going to be in the gist of what we're going to be talking about accreditation. As I said, there are few parameters which all of us need to be clear about before your institute or before you individually get into any exercise of accreditation. So what I mean to say is, we're all from pharmacy domain, and in pharmacy domain, every graduate who passes pharmacy, who is from X college, who is from Y college, who is from Z college, needs to have certain set of skills or traits. This skill set or traits that a student has to gain after he completes his program of, say, B.Pharm of 4 years is something that has to be common whether you give the degree or whether I give the degree, because it's governed by the profession. So this, in other words, is called as skill sets or traits, which are also called as graduate attributes. If you Google fast, you will understand that worldwide, this attributes, graduate attributes, is not a new terminology. The maximum graduate attributes that are listed are hardly 14 graduate attributes worldwide, globally. It's not only in India I'm talking about. But what is more specific for an engineering student, what's more specific for a pharmacy graduate, is what we are taking up as skill and traits for a pharmacy graduates, which is the most important thing that every individual who passes out should have from any institute. Leave alone you talk about any kind of accreditation or ranking. This is our moral responsibility. When I talk it's a moral responsibility, it should be that all these traits and skill sets have been listed for our convenience by the National Board of Accreditation, which are called as program outcomes. So these attributes which contribute to the measurement of the program outcomes, because only once the student clears his graduation in the duration of the stipulated program, for example, B.Pharm in the stipulated program time of 4 years, he would get all the skill sets of whatever is listed, these 12 skill sets which are listed, which ranges from getting the domain knowledge, has to be there. Working in a team, others can't survive in the outside world. Ethics, imbibed in every aspect of your work. Not only your work, in every aspect of what you perform, what you do. It's kind of oxygen that you breathe in. Ethics has to be breath. No? It's your breathing. Like your breathing, it's like oxygen. It has to be there. There is nothing, no substitute for ethics. So it has to be imbibed. How you do it, whether you are working in an industry, whether you're going to be teaching in a college, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, ethics is important. You are in a position to solve problems. Gone are the days I was a student and I had a set of questions. The way it used to be asked, the way I used to answer, it all used to be different. Today it's different. Why is it different? Is it that I am not able to answer those questions which I have with the knowledge that I have learned at that point in time? No, it's something called as continuous learning. So continuous learning is where you get a platform during your graduation so that you can have lifelong learning further. So these are some of the examples that I am trying to. Communication skills. You might be a very good teacher. You might be a very knowledgeable teacher. Unless you are able to put forth what you have into the minds of students, dissipate the information in the form that it is required, in the manner which is required for a student to be clear in thoughts and to pass his exam, you're not called as a good teacher. And that's the reason. Good communication skills. You're a good marketing person. You have beautiful strategy. But if you are in marketing, you need to have skills where you're going to be convincing others about what you are, what plans you have. So in whatever way you have, communication skills come into the picture. So what I mean to say is these are just a few examples of some skill sets which have been listed. So we generally tell our teachers to please go through all these skill sets, and as a teacher, where does it fit in whatever subject I teach? It's not difficult. It's absolutely not difficult. It's logical. So wherever it fits into my particular curriculum is what I want to actually map it. And once I do that, I can gauge that if I have 60 students, how many students are good, how many students are bad. And what happens is when you have the batch passing by, you understand and you measure the outcome of that program for that batch. So it's not difficult. Today, it's a mindset. Please don't take me otherwise. I understand all of us are in the same boat. Please don't take me otherwise. I reiterate. It's only reason I'm emphasizing is the change in the mindset that I urge all the teachers to have is, oh no, my institute is going in for an accreditation or a ranking. Oh no, it's kind of a lot of work for me, a lot of clerical work for me, a lot of administrative work for me. It has benefited me personally, and I am really very benefited by all what I'm talking about. And believe me, I have implemented all these things, and that's why so emphatically I can urge to all of you that if you implement even one single parameter, understanding what it is. For example, let me come across one example which said program outcomes. As a teacher, let's start with something called as, I'm taking a particular course. All of you know I have been teaching pharmacology. All of you know that I have my favorite topic in pharmacology becomes my toxicology. So if I'm taking a course on toxicology or any subject, any topic in pharmacology, the first and foremost, what helps me is looking into my syllabus. This really helped me in 2012. And that's why you could see, whether it's our director, Sir Dr. Gaud, whether it's our colleagues who are there in this call, in this talk, all of them will 100% agree that how it has helped in strategizing and systemizing our work schedule. Okay. So what we first did was, what is the kind of subject, what is the kind of course that I'm taking is to be understood by the teacher. Once I understand what is the course, what is the objective in me giving or delivering this particular course. So I first define the course objective. If the course objective is defined and the course or the syllabus, many of you, the syllabus is given by the university if it's an affiliated college. If it is a deemed university like ours, we have the prerogative and the autonomy to set our own syllabus. However, it doesn't matter. Even if the university for an affiliated college gives you the kind of course with its objective, does it suffice what you have to convey as a teacher? Or you tweak it in the way that you would tell the students, this is the objective of me teaching this particular course, and this is where I start teaching my course. Once I finish the course, I lay down my outcomes that after completion, successful completion of the course, the student should be able to. So I have my outcomes listed. I would like to share something. Me and two of my colleagues went to attend an ABET workshop. ABET is generally for the engineering graduates, but as I told you, all these accrediting bodies revolve around the same parameters. When we went there, in simple language, the tutor told us,
The student performs the best when he knows what is he being evaluated for. What is he being evaluated for? The reason why we in India, many of the times, take sadistic pleasure in trying to understand what the student does not know. So here is the change in the mindset. If I train the students and I tell the students that these are the parameters based on which you're going to be evaluated, this is where I would see that you are going to be tested for, I bet on it, the student learning will be better. What am I trying to come around about? It's kind of the education system where India made a paradigm shift from the regular teaching learning process to an outcome-based education. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is not only what I'm trying to tell as a teacher, it's more important for me to see what the student has learned. It's not enough for me to understand, yes, I have delivered for 1 full hour and I feel I have done the best as a teacher. I would understand this only when most of my students perform better, do better, means the learning has been demonstrated. This is the crux of all what we are talking about. How do we understand the outcome-based education? I totally agree. We have adopted, which means India has adopted this outcome-based education at a time when it was at most essential for our engineering education. But at the same time, now that from 2012, 2012 to 2020, we have gone through almost 8 years, and I think it's a time to make a start to ideally understand the essence of each parameter and then work towards it and further slowly build on it. That's where I feel that the quality will be achieved. You talk about faculty. We were talking about faculty. If you look into the National Board of Accreditation, criteria 5, okay? Criteria 5, it talks about faculty. How many faculty members are there? Why does it say so? Because it says that one faculty should be in a position to respond to the queries, should be in a position to make the students understand. And so the overall student and faculty ratio has to be maintained to a certain level where the teaching and the learning would be the most effective. So there's a small benchmark given to that. Better than that, you get full. Lower than that, pro rata basis, you're marked less. The same thing if you look into NIRF ranking, it's very clear, evident. They mention there, if your ratio is 1:15, you get full marks. You get full marks. What does this mean? It's the same funda that they are also trying to portray to everybody. It's not that they're counting the heads. It's for them to convey that when you have enough faculty members in the organization and when you maintain certain ratio, the learning and the teaching and the learning becomes most effective. In case of NAC, it goes a step further. It tells you, it also accepts up to 1:20, right? You get full marks with 1:20. You get full weightage to it. But it also talks about faculty qualification. ND also talks about faculty qualification, but it only tells you how many PhDs you have. 33% of these faculty should at least be PhD. And all of us get irked up on this kind of a statement which is written in their manual. But what is it trying to convey? It's only trying to convey that no offense for non-PhDs who have logged in, but it makes a difference because the 4 years of you getting into the research and you getting into solving the problem, you getting into identifying the problem, getting the resources to solve the problem, then solving the problem, then convincing your mentor for it, and then convincing the external for it. It involves a lot of juggling, lot of mindset, and a lot of preparation, which prepares you for you making the students prepared for all the hardships. So it's only thing, it's a training process that we undergo during our PhD, and of course a piece of work which we feel it's very innovative and we present to the outside world. So the PhD count does make a difference. NIRF goes a little further. It tells you how many faculty members you have less than 8 years and how many faculty members you have in the range of 8 to 15 years. And how many of them you have from above 15 years? Why do they say that? No offense to people who are totally having white hair, and no offense to people who are very young. It's only again trying to convey this message that this kind of a mix, a blend of teachers who are very fresh, who are bubbling with energy, who have so many innovative ideas, because that is this generation. Then the teaching fraternity who have already seen the other side, worked with experienced people, and who are also trying to cope with the new faculty members, and a set of faculty members who have already passed almost half of their life in teaching, and so the experience that they have, we need to learn from that. So a blend of all these three would make the environment so conducive to learn, that it would be the best environment ever possible for students to learn and graduate from. And that's the reason NIRF gives full weightage if you have equal ratio of these three categories. And so, my dear friends, I would like to again reiterate, no matter which accreditation you're looking into, whether it is national, whether it is program, whether it is international, it doesn't matter. If it is a student parameter, the concept is the same. The student should have you selected as the best choice, not as a choice only available because of CET, not because only that his rank was so and so he came into. He should all have selected your institute as the first and the foremost, and students should strive to come to the institute, and that's where you're being evaluated for, and that's where your quality, your brand stands for. Faculty is the most important parameter. You cannot get away from not having faculty, not having good faculty, not having the faculty members with PhD, not having, if at all they are not PhDs, support them with having PhDs, but the blend of all these three would make your institute, your department, the Pharma Institute, the best way where it can be looked into as the institute where the student thrives to look into. I would, to some extent, also like to touch upon the teaching learning pedagogy. Gone are the times where only monologue used to be the mode of teaching. I can see one of my teachers also logged in. No offense to him, please. But also that when my teacher used to teach, many a times, I never had the courage even to stand up and ask what if at all I had a doubt. But today, again, this generation is quite vocal. It's quite vocal. I request the organizer to put all others except me on mute, please. I can have some disturbances being heard.
Yeah,
so what happens is the faculty and the teaching pedagogy, the student learning, all is revolving around. I don't say the blackboard can be totally eliminated with innovative teaching methods. I don't say that. There are some of these courses, there are some of the topics which are the best taught face-to-face and with a chalk on the board. So it does not replace the modern technology, but the modern technology or the teaching aids are always mistaken today. The teaching aids does not mean that when you have a presentation being uploaded and teaching through a presentation is use of a teaching aid and innovative way of seen. There are a lot many teachers who might have presentations made, but unfortunately, if there is no electricity, if there is no connectivity, if they're not able to upload their presentation, they get paranoid and they're not able to take the lectures. This is not what technology means. Use of technology or use of ICT does not mean only using a presentation. Today, there are so many open sources where you have these student portals or maybe the learning management systems. Moodle is one of them, which is free of cost. You don't have to have a Blackboard, which is a patented technology, and you pay through your nose to have the licenses for Blackboard technology. but you have Moodle, which is free of cost. I have personally visited 1 or 2 institutions where the students have created a learning management system, and it's working fantastically. One of them is Vellore Institute of Technology. The teachers and the students have made the learning management system, and it is so beautiful that every student is able to be connected to teacher outside the classroom like a virtual classroom. You understand? That's the purpose of learning management system. So what do you mean? When we started using our learning management systems, the first thing we requested our faculty members is, if you can put up your teaching plan or your lesson plan. So far, we've always noted everybody has it. Probably you do it sincerely before you start teaching, or probably you do it just because you have to fill it and get your HOD's signature. That doesn't mean. It always means that you need to be doing it to serve the purpose. What's wrong in your students understanding that what you have to teach, when you have to teach, objective of what you're teaching, outcome of what you would be assessing after you teach. So all these things, when you look into and put up on the learning management system as a platform, it's going to benefit you and it's going to benefit the students. One day, a student got up in my class. There's a disadvantage also. He was a pretty bright student, and he said that I don't understand what you're teaching, because this doesn't interest me at all, because all what you have taught is all what I have learned in my 12th standard. And I do not come from the normal board. I come from an ICSC board wherein all these things and much beyond this is what I have learned in anatomy and physiology. So what I'm learning, how am I going to be interested in the class of 60 minutes? And how do you expect me not to listen to you, or listen to you not doing anything else? This was an interesting question. How did we tackle this? We went into something which he did not know. We went into something called as pathophysiology, and then teaching them or giving them a glimpse of what happens in the near real world outside, touching upon those facets of pathophysiology. We got them to the normal learning, normal functioning, normal working of an organ, which he understood that although he knew about it, it was not what he could connect. So the connect between what he was learning to make him understand that was the duty of the teacher at that point in time. For this, the faculty requires to undergo a lot of faculty development programs, continuous development programs. There is nothing that everybody is a know-all person. It needs continuous enhancement of knowledge. Every day the rules are changing. Every day the facts are changing. Somebody says drink more topic, somebody drink more water, somebody says don't drink water, somebody says stand and drink water, somebody says sit and drink water. There are so many theories to it. Believe in one, get into deeper, absorb and accept it. Except we as teachers, it's not that we know everything. So it's very essential for teachers to register for the faculty development workshops, for the programs which will give us incremental growth in our knowledge every year. If you look into the aided institutions, it's always that you need to complete 2 QIP programs before you go into the next cadre. It's just for the heck of it. But the essence of it, people who actually articulated all this was only with an objective that teachers require to have some incremental growth in their day-to-day teaching and learning. Pedagogy needs to be different. Today, because of COVID-19, we're forced to come online. We all of a sudden stopped somewhere around March 20th, where we were just finishing all our portion. We were just finishing our academic year, and we were all set into the next next evaluation parameter for the term and examination. What happened? Everything went topsy-turvy. Everything went topsy-turvy. But what happened was, if you have inclination, if you have an open mind, if your faculty members, you're ready to accept, we immediately conducted almost around 8 training programs for faculty members who immediately got trained in Microsoft Teams, some Zoom licenses that we had, and all this we shifted onto. And towards the end of the session, whatever was remaining, we were able to complete that in an online mode. We do get such comments saying that online mode, सामने रहता है तो बच्चा पढ़ता नहीं है. I'm sorry for people who have logged in from South. The student, if he is sitting in right in front of my, under my nose in the class, does not listen to me, what would he concentrate on an online lecture? It's just a farce. It doesn't help. It's not that way. Believe me, if you have certain essence in what you're talking, if you could make the lecture interesting, if the student feels he is gaining something from this lecture, he would definitely log in, because it's something that it interests him and he would like to listen. If it's something that is available in the book and in the Google immediately, then it would be something that I would read. I don't need somebody for me to be talking about it, and I would do something better than this, and probably I would log in and do something else. It's a perception. But my, again, emphasizing on what I wish to say is pedagogy is not a particular terminology which is by thumb rule, you need to do something like this. But it's observed that blended mode of learning always gives you a better learning. Had we incorporated 5%, 2% of our teaching learning on an online mode, today, at least as I had to be suffering for completing what we had to, would not have happened. Although we managed it quite efficiently, the mindset which we had to put in, undergo training within a week, and then switch on to Microsoft Teams, and then take lectures, and then complete it, it wouldn't have been possible. So it's very important. In fact, we just had 2 workshops for our faculty members where we felt that even in our online teaching, there is something called as synchronous and asynchronous evaluation. How do I understand that there is somebody here who is Chandak here, who is Pethe here, who is Dr. Ravi Kiran here? How am I going to be understanding whether he is concentrating or whether he has actually understood? So there are ways and means to have this being evaluated, not per se an examination, but of course a way that you could evaluate and assess. It's not evaluation, it is assessing. And what are you trying to assess? It's assessing the teaching by the learning process. Okay, so that's where I was surprised when during the introduction of this talk, Dr. Anil said that there's going to be no quiz after this. I would have loved to have quiz, which would have been very clear whether this 1 hour, 1 hour 10 minutes has really made a difference to actually assimilate 3 things. Number 1, the differences between what do you mean by approvals, rankings, accreditation. Is an approval most essential, or understanding ranking and probably the accreditation? Any of these, wherever the faculty is going to be involved, engaged with, you need to be understanding the essence of it. We touched upon only 2 parameters, which was with respect to students, what is necessary, and to some extent, we also touched upon what would be most essential for faculty members from the institute perspective, and for faculty members to develop themselves, and also to have the ICT being incorporated, and to be having blended learning being propagated, because we felt when we benefited by blended learning as the best method rather than adopting one single technology. So this was something that I have at least tried to convey till this extent. If the organizers permit me to continue, there's a major aspect of research, at least to touch upon. How much time do I have is what I wish to understand, because I was given to understand that the lecture would be only for an hour. So we have just completed that. So I would just want to, yes, Anil?
15 more minutes you may continue. There are around 700 participants on YouTube, and Zoom chat is full, and they are listening very well.
Oh, I'm happy that there are 1,000 viewers still watching past 1 hour. So thanks for the grace period that I have achieved. And I would like to make the fullest use of this grace time that I have got. A little bit that I would like to talk about research. Long back, maybe even a decade back, there used to be a very simple statement which used to say, I'm a teacher from an undergraduate school. Undergraduate teachers don't need to be in research. So research is not that very important for me. I think research is important for those who are guiding the postgraduate students, those who are guiding the postdoctoral students or the doctoral students. So it's absolutely not necessary for me as an undergraduate teacher to be into research. My dear friends, gone are the times to think about and to have that kind of perception. Today is a time, publish, patent, or perish. You will not exist if you do not have good publications. You will perish if you do not have good patents. It's not very easy for somebody to have patents, and it's not an overnight thing, and it's not an individual per se an approach towards getting patents. But research is certainly your domain. If I don't know what's happening new in my domain, and I am not keeping myself abreast of the newest things in my own subject, my own field, how do I go ahead? Research is the only way where you would also in your fraternity. Now, I don't mean the whole teaching pharmacy fraternity. I mean, is the pharmacology domain. If I have to be known for something, I would speak something and present something for which I would be started to be knowing as a person who is working on this research domain. That becomes my area of research. So I start building up my network, and networking is very important. Believe me, no work can be done alone. It's always a teamwork. It's always a networking. So I have benefited a lot by this networking. Today, I need X thing for my institute from a particular domain. It's just a phone call, and probably I get it. It's only because the networking and the kind of friends that have been developed in the fraternity, where I start speaking on a particular topic and people start knowing you that yes, there is this person in this institute who is working on it. May it be for consultancy, may it be for research. Today, our institute might have n number of sophisticated equipments, but the X institute doesn't have. Why are we looking in for collaborations with outside world? Why are we looking into collaborations with foreign countries? How many of us even think of collaborations with the institutions which are within India, within our state first? Why don't we have shared resources? Why don't we share our publications, and why don't we give credit to each one of us who have been contributing? Please bear in, people who are contributing, not just because they are HODs, they are contributing. Again, no offense to HODs and seniors, please. I'm only wanting to have a good culture of research being propagated in every institute, in every department you belong to. And believe me, the senior most and the junior most both have the potential. If both come along, there's a far way you can go ahead on in research. Today, I was very happy. One of my new campuses like Hyderabad, their pharmacy is just budding in, and they're trying to have their reach being propagated to so many people. In this COVID-19 situation where we are all locked up into our own houses, there have been 4 to 5 proposals. In fact, one fine day, the head Anil Pethe called up the associate dean and said, I require a declaration and a covering letter to be signed by you, madam, as a registrar. I'm sorry, but I do not know how you would do it from home, but this is what is in my mind. I truly appreciate this gesture, is because there are 4 projects or 5 projects going in for funding. And I assure you, even if there is one that comes into, they are successful. This is where the start is, where you have some kind of mentoring, where you need some kind of mentoring, where seniors and juniors come together in a department. There should be no scorpion type of attitude. If there is a scorpion, kill the scorpion, throw them out of the department. But please, gel with people who are of equal frequency, people who could work together, and people who could take the institute and the department further. There was one suggestion where they wanted me to touch upon innovation. How do you define innovation? Innovation is something that nobody else has done. It's the first time that you're doing, and it's something going to be useful for the society and for the environment that you're going to be discovering it for, right? When you talk about innovation, it's not a single day's job. It's a culture that has to be inculcated in the institute and in the department. It's not even one department's work. Today you have a whole, you have full institute where you have main 4 departments as chemistry, pharmacology, pharmaceutics. I can hardly have 1 or 2 or maybe few institutions where the chemistry department gets into the lead molecules, gets into the pharmacology, where probably some in vitro studies or through some CAD gets into filtering the molecules, goes into some in vivo or in vitro testing. Once they do that, they have the pharmaceutics department, gets into the pre-formulation studies, develops a formulation, comes back to the pharmacology, gets into the stability studies and the toxicological studies, and then writes a patent and goes into innovation. It looks like a fairy tale, but it's not very difficult. But it's a continuity. As faculty members, as we are going ahead, I think it would take a year, but there has to be a start to go ahead with. It's not going to happen within a day, within 6 months, but this is something that batches would come and go, students would come and go, but it would be something where you have to start this culture, start this kind of a research bent mindset, create the innovation center. Today, government helps you. Believe me, NMIMS has been one of the very few institutions in the universities which have been benefited by getting the Atal Innovation Center being constituted in our university. You know, the kind of incubatees that come in, the kind of mentors that can come in, this is only possible when you have a funding. So if you're going to be a liability on your institution, research would go on a snail's pace. If you have funding, if you have the support of your institute as well as the government for you to be funded, and government has got ample of funds for being rightly invested, rightly being articulate a beautiful innovation project. AICT has got a lot of, all of us are technical institutions, and we have been writing to AICT. AICT is urging for y'all to please submit proposals on innovation so that an innovation center can be constituted. MHRD also gives you a lot of funding, but believe me, unless you have the support of your institution and unless you have the support of the funding agency, it's very difficult to go ahead with a kind of innovation that all of us are looking ahead with. So I wish to also, before I conclude, this innovation and this research has got a lot of weightage in our NIRF also. And the best part is, it's not what you and me are giving them the data. It's they taking up the data from the public domain, right? So what happens is your work speaks for it. There's no harm when you have collaborative work. They also get credit, you also get credit. So please encourage collaborative work, encourage people who need not be in your department for 10 years and 20 years, encourage talent in the department, and please see to it that teamwork would be the best, where I think NMIMS Hyderabad is the best testimonial. I can see all faculty members who have been sharing the responsibility, although it's a small unit, all faculty members sharing their responsibility. And congratulations to the Associate Dean and to the in-charge director. You'll go far way ahead. All our compliments to you from the university, all the support and all this, thanks for the patient listening to all the viewers who have given me the opportunity to actually reach up to you at this particular time, where all of us have actually reached the saturation level and are trying to find something new. So this probably also gave me a vent today, where I have been engaged in something very constructive, and my brain scratching the having been brushed, so that I speak something which would be really useful to all. And I hope I have clarified to some extent, because this, what I have tried to give you a gist, is what we speak for 1 week in our faculty development programs, with actually all the hands-on working sessions. So we look forward whenever we are going to be having these sessions, and I would be happy to take up questions from the organizers who have collected most of the questions, are going to be compiling it and shooting towards me. So I'm all ready for it. And thanks a lot from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. Yes, Dr.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such an informative session. And
the organizers, please,
so many compliments are there in my chat box, in my phone also. And
Anil, I would like to have a feedback session, and frankly, share the feedback session. Because that's that's something where we learn, and where I need to improve would also be useful to me. Please, that would be the end of the session. So please don't forget to take a feedback session in writing and document it.
It's already documented. We are waiting for the feedback to be filled by the participants. I hope they have received the feedback link. But my chat box is full with flooded with so many questions. So we'll take few questions.
Sure. And I feel if you could eliminate later on, if you can eliminate a few of the repetitive questions, I would love to answer each one of them, and then you could post it wherever convenient, and all of them can even refer to and take the benefit of it. But of course, today we will take up a few questions now. Go ahead, Anil.
Ma'am, the first question from Dr. Shirkhedkar from our Shirpur campus. His question is how to motivate faculty to achieve institute objectives. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. I would like to start with something called as a vision. Okay. Vision is always laid down by the leaders of the organization. Of course, taking into consideration all the people of an organization, but all of us can't be leaders. If all of us are leaders, there is no objective met with, and there is no vision where that will be achieved. So once we have a vision of an institute, which is aligned with the vision of the university, the motivation for the faculty is to work towards that vision. You can't have a vision, or you can't have some objective totally out of the box. The methodology can be out of the box, but he needs to be within the periphery that he has been given to revolve around. Motivation first comes from within. If you do something which is really going to make a difference in the department, there is nobody who can stop you, even if they want to stop you. Because you get the student support, you get a support which is the result, you get a support which is some kind of a measurable outcome because of your motivation and your good work. So you don't wait for anybody to motivate you. You don't wait for anybody to motivate you. Motivation comes from within. And if you want to be motivated, connect with me after the lecture. We will have motivational lectures. But please be sure, sometimes what happens is, when you have a large organization, it so happens that it is not possible to pep up every individual. So it really becomes the duty of the head of the department, or probably the duty of the respective heads, So to pep up the person if not motivated, but be rest assured, I again reiterate, every faculty, not only in our institution, every faculty in every institution is an asset. So never get demotivated. The organization, the most important part in an organization, pillar of the organization, is always a faculty.
Ma'am, it's always a pleasure to listening to you. I'm having another question for you. He's Dr. Anne Gowda. I think he's from Bangalore. Does the accreditation assure the student quality education?
No.
Students from few old government pharmacy institutions like GCP Bangalore without MBA, NAC are placed in good pharma companies with good package compared to other
True.
accredited institutes.
I agree. I again reiterate, it's not that all the accredited institutes are of good quality. Accreditation is the most important thing and mandatory to be a testimonial for good institution. But today, it so happens that proving the credibility becomes utmost important for private self-financed institutions. So it so happens that when in a government institution, the aid comes from the government, the funds for any research is given from the government. And today also, very bluntly, I can say, when I went to present one of my DAE grants, okay, for a DAE grant, I was standing in front of 12 people. And the first question which was asked to me was, you belong to a self-financed private institute, university. You all have a lot of money. Why do you need government funding? So it becomes very necessary for us to prove ourselves before we actually prove the essence of our project. So it so happens that you're perfectly right. It is not a testimonial to any kind of institute, but for people to survive in the kind of competitive world and to prove ourselves, we need to. And even if you have a good accrediting grade, maybe in a period of time, if you do not stand by, if you do not actually mean that, it's going to be in the public world, and that itself would be told that I do not know how did they get. So yes, compliments for the institute to place the students and for good companies to come in. But what happens is, it's still an unsaid fact that when they are government aided institutions, the first step to prove credibility is automatic. And that's the step where we private self-financed, especially deemed to be universities, struggled to achieve the credibility. And that's where we say that today I say there are 80,000 students who apply to my MBA program where I have hardly around 1,000 seats. That is credibility. It doesn't come because of NBA. It doesn't come because of my AACSB. It comes because the culture has set in, although a private. But here, I am proud to say I'm category 1 university, where there are 22 universities in whole of India and hardly 10, 11 private universities which have been given this graded autonomy. So all these things which matter, all these are interlinked. It is not per se, don't compartmentalize it only by ranking or only by this. So it's a holistic way.
I think, ma'am, students are the real asset of any institution, especially the alumni. And I just want to share one episode. Today we had conducted our Davatel Alumni Connect activity. And one of our first batch student, Mr. Saurabh, was there. And he was mentioning the names of the teacher. He mentioned about you, he mentioned about Gaud sir, Bala ma'am, Varsha Pradhan ma'am. So it was very nice. And he said, like, I am from a very small village from Bihar, Jitan Ram Manji. Sorry, that Manji ka village jo tha na, pahad todne wala Manji. I am from that village, and today I am working with one of the biggest pharma industry in India. Yeah, multinational.
Very nice. So very nice.
He said, I am very proud of my institution. I think this is the real asset where any institution is grooming the students.
That's where teachers, that is a treasure for teachers.
Yeah. So one more question. He's Dr. Ajay Pete from Wardha.
Aapka bhai hai kya?
Yes. How to improve teaching for outcome learning to students? He's working with School of Business Management, Datta Meghe University.
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, great. In fact, for management, it is more easier because what happens is most of the management education is like, case study based, role plays, simulation. So there are so many ways that they can actually tweak their pedagogy. And the best part is they don't even have to have paid cases or Harvard cases. There are ways and means where they can take the Indian cases or the freely available cases. And mostly the teaching goes in for almost an hour and a half. And then the students also get to speak for the rest of the lecture session. So this mode of listening and then giving, and then the case study way of teaching, which is not possible 100% for pharmacy, but it is possible 95% for management, would be the most effective way to adopt outcome-based education. Just think about what would the student be able to do is what is outcome-based education, which should be measurable. Anil, I would request him to attend one of our faculty development workshops when we have, so that, attending that and hands-on getting on to his subject would be more better in understanding, and then he can implement it.
Right now, there are more than 1,300 participants attending on YouTube.
Oh, there are, okay, the 1,300 participants.
Yeah, number
currently.
I'm
very happy.
One more question.
I'm very happy. Compliments to you to organize such and have more informative, where it could be a common base, probably one of these topics also. Now, for example, as one of them asked, how do you have the outcome measured? So probably one full 1 hour for program outcomes, one full hour for course outcomes, one full hours, how do you develop a rubric, and how do you map? ये सबको एक घंटा लगता है. It's not that everything can be learnt in 1 hour. So, they will also start doing it in their own way, in their own institute.
Yeah, I agree with ma'am. We heard several hours from you as far as the accreditation is concerned with Maiskar sir, you, Moile sir. One more question I would like to take.
I have been able to do that is only because of these people and this opportunity given to me by them. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. One more question from Dr. Samir Goel from Dhule, our SVKM Institute of Pharmacy Dhule principal.
He is SVKM, yes.
Yeah. Why there is need for different accreditation like NAAC, NBA? Why not single accreditation system in our country?
Goel sir, we have program accreditation is only one, which is NBA. Institute accreditation is only one, which is NAAC. So in India, if you look into, you could either, nobody says if you have NAAC, it's compulsory to go in for NBA. What happens is when SVKM, for example, our Dhule campus, when we have engineering, when we have pharmacy, we might have management, all these domains come together to prove your pharmacy has already met with standards and you have climbed the ladder fast. You might go in for NBA accreditation, that's a program accreditation. Down the line, when after 5 to 10 years, when the whole campus has gained some momentum, and it's the only possibility to have NAAC accreditation. So nobody, I think, would force you to go in for both if you do not want to go in for institute accreditation. It's up to us. There's only one program accreditation. There's only one institute accreditation.
I have one more question from Dr. Mahendra Rana from Uttarakhand. He's asking, how do you consider all the rankings provided by various agencies, including QS ranking, BRICS ranking, and some providers like the Times Magazine?
I would like to I wouldn't go in for the other private rankings like the India Today or the Week or the Hansa ranking. I'm not touching upon any of those rankings. Number one is the NIRF ranking, where the parameters are so well laid, and that is the institution, national framework. So we should aim at it. Once we have, see, when you set a goal, I can't be the best globally first. I need to be the best in my domain, in my area first. So go in for some state ranking if you have. There are many states like Karnataka, Chennai, Tamil Nadu, all these places where they have their state ranking going on, where it is parallel to NIRF ranking. So first go in for the state ranking or some kind of a estimation that amongst the colleges which are existing in your vicinity, where do you stand? And then I would say that the state ranking ke baad, it is very essential to go in for national ranking. After the national ranking, it so happens that go in for a global ranking, but the idea and the objective of evaluation and assessment for the global ranking is far more different. If you have looked into, say, QS ranking or Times ranking, they have almost 30 to 40% of their ranking parameters based on international students and international teachers. Have we grown up to that? So we know where our limits are. We know where our visibility is more. But according to me, national ranking is of utmost importance amongst the institutes of pharmacy, especially pharmacy. We are a very small family, right? We would recognize mostly everybody by names also, right? If you are working in a pharma institution for a decade, we would know everybody by names, and they would also recognize us by our names and our organization. So I would request the professor who is asking this question in Uttarakhand that it should be that work towards National Institute framework, ranking framework. This is of utmost importance, and work towards, first do the homework. Don't apply unless you are absolutely prepared for. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Already it's 1.5 hours. We'll take 2 to 3 questions, and remaining questions, I will request the participants or
sure.
team to enlist all those, and we'll later
absolutely.
on.
I'm okay as you say.
Yeah, we'll forward all those questions to you, and we'll give some homework to you, ma'am.
So only one request, if ma'am, I have one question if possible.
Please,
yeah.
doctor.
So how do we, the corporate team or corporate India or corporate world perceives these rankings? If you can just touch
it makes a lot of difference today, not only to the corporate world. When people come in for placements to our institute and to our university, the moment in pharmacy school, I say that we are the 13th and we are the 9th in NIRF in these years, the kind of perception that they have is very different, because it's a national framework, and as I told you, they understand and they feel that we are much connected with the industry. We are making the students very ready for the industry, or per se, not only for the industry, even when students go in for higher studies, the kind of feedback that we have got is they are very easily coping with whatever environment that we are putting in. So according to me, personally, I feel the kind of experience that we have, and after the rankings and the NAC ranking that we have got, it's not only with the corporates, it's also with the statutory bodies. When we go and we speak, when we say that we are category 1 university, automatically the perception changes. The number of questions and the number of sessions of meetings that we want to have with them for a particular work is by and large reduced. So I feel the credibility gets established, whatever you say. And this category 1 has been possible to us only because of our NAC ranking. We've been consequently been ranked the highest grade in 3 cycles. And this is a 3rd cycle where NMIMS University has been ranked 3.59. And that's where we were one of the 22 institutions which were conferred upon as by the HRD and the UGC as the category 1 university in the graded data. It makes a lot of difference, Dr. Ravi Kiran. I feel so.
Yes, ma'am, we'll take last question.
Please, sir.
From Dr. Anamika Upadhyay. Please suggest some ways to improve the work of IQAC. I think this is a very important question.
IQAC, Dr. Upadhyay, where is madam from?
Sorry, ma'am, I don't know. She's from Rajasthan.
She's from
Rajasthan.
Yeah. Okay. IQAC needs to be the most dynamic cell. It is called as very commonly I tell in my lectures, IQAC is the arm of the university, which means every aspect of what work is being done in every department should be moved through IQAC. For your benefit, please split your all activities into 4 main buckets. One is the student bucket. When I say student bucket, it starts from student enrollment. It starts from student comfort and the grievance and the life of a student within the institute, the mentoring of the student, the student progression, the student placement, the student experiential learning, and the student outcomes. All this will be put into the student bucket. When I talk about the faculty and the teaching learning, I would put all my things into what is the current pedagogy, what is the resources available in my institute, how many faculty members are currently there, how many would I require in my institute to comply with good standards, what do I need to do to coax and to motivate my faculty to either register for PhD or probably to have faculty development workshops, or me organize faculty development workshops and they do good research. How do I make them involved in research? How do I form groups? How do I attract the industries? How do I get some of the companies, may be non-remunerative, but how do I connect the industry to my faculty members for some kind of a consultancy? So all these things would be in faculty. Then comes in the infrastructure. Today, everybody has got good buildings, but still these good buildings, is it sufficing my particular requirement is what I need to look into. So what happens is IQAC, if you have a core group and people of all departments, you need to discuss and have deliberations on all these matters which have been segregated into buckets. All need not be acted upon in one meeting. You can have at least 4 meetings a year, and each meeting have please some discussion points from each of these buckets. I'm sure you get started with this, you will have a dynamic IQAC. Absolutely. You will come back to me saying that it would be a very active cell of the organizer. It needs to give suggestions, throw suggestions on the management and on the higher authorities on every aspect of functioning of the school or the institute.
So there are few suggestions also to organize workshop in this area. So okay. I just want to inform the participants, like we do organize such type of conferences, workshops, and especially for the NBA, NAC, and
we'll definitely have one for the IQAC members. Yeah. We'll plan. Sure. Okay.
So, ma'am, I think it's almost 2 hours you was talking.
Yeah, it's 2 hours.
Yeah. So, I have to conclude this. So, thank you very much, ma'am, for very informative session. Like so many comments are there, and till the end, it was 1,700 participants attending this meeting. Let me complete the
1,700.
1,700, yeah, on YouTube.
1,700, and in Zoom we almost touched 90 plus. I think it is going
almost 90 plus 100 in Zoom.
80,
I'm very happy. I'm very happy that I could reach to almost 1,800 people.
Yes,
after 1.5 to 2 hours, they're still there. I'm really very happy. Thank you very much.
Recording will be available on the SPTM Hyderabad YouTube channel. So maybe people will watch later on.
Thank you very much for all the support given.
I just want to conclude this session by vote of thanks. So at the end, I'm very much thankful to our Chancellor Shri Amrish Bhai Patel for providing all the facilities and support necessary for conducting all the activities.
Vision is most important.
Yes, his dynamic vision, I can say. I'm thankful to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Bhatt sir, our Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Maheshkar sir, and Dr. Ray sir for their continuous support. And of course,
of course, Dr. Sharad Maheshkar and Mr. Nilesh Moile are also watching this. So I think Maheshkar sir just logged off.
Yeah. And as a registrar, I must say thanks to you. You are always supporting. And Dr. R.S. Gaud, our director of Shirpur campus, for his valuable guidance and mentoring all the time. Dr. Bala Prabhakar ma'am, who is the Dean of SPTM Mumbai, and Dr. Ravi Kiran sir for their help for organizing this event and their motivation. And last but not least, to all the participants, more than 1800 participants who are attending this webinar live on the YouTube as well as the Zoom app. And I must congratulate my faculty team, Dr. Santosh Ele, Dr. Rahul Maheshwari, Dr. Lakshman Puli, and Dr. Kapil Kumar for their continuous support. So they are helping me in organizing whatever the event, and as a team, we are the best. So thank you very much to each one of you for your valuable time. The feedback form is available to you. Just fill the feedback, and once you click on the feedback, submit the feedback, immediately you will get your certificate. Thank you very much. Be safe. Have a happy weekend.
Stay in and stay
good
safe.
Night.
Good
Stay
night.
safe. Yeah.
Thank
you, ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Minaj, I think
Good
personally, though your pharma subject is a toxicology, but we all intoxicated in your complete subject, and it's so wonderful. I mean, it is just can't imagine. I think probably I had to, as administratively we heard quite a number of times, but on topic, I think this is the first time. I think we really love to have you. Maybe probably we'll see every quarter we should have a updated version of the on the theme.
Sure,
then probably we'll be happy to have you again and again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Especially, I would like to mention that without referring any PowerPoint presentation or any papers, he was talking since last 2 hours.
I don't have time. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Great. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks.
And
good night.
Thank you all participants. Wonderful having you. I think I could see in my laptop, I think I have 4 windows of the participants. Still need to continue in swapping them. I think wonderful having you all. Thank you, Dr. Anil and everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we'll conclude the meeting here.
Yeah.
Stop live stream.